So like I said in the introduction, the first video today is just going to be a real quick recap. I'm just going to stop off on a couple of things that I did in the project last week when I was doing the demo, and just kind of point out a couple of things that I think you should just be aware of whenever we're working this week. So last week we kind of started off by looking at the very, very basics of Unreal. So we looked at some of the terms that we kind of end up using quite often. So the first one being level. So a level is kind of something that most of us at this stage should be familiar with. So it's basically a container that contains all our level logic, any assets we have there, any interactivity, any kind of enemies that we're going to put in. But quite often when you're working in menu systems and UI in Unreal, sometimes your levels act as just a container and just a place to put some scripting to load up a widget. And that's what we did in the project last week, and I'll kind of explain it in a little bit more detail in a second. So the next thing we're looking at is just a widget. So a widget is a type of blueprint in Unreal that's kind of got like two sides to it. It's got a 2D kind of front facing side to it that the user sees, and then it's got a back end, so like a scripting side to it that just the developer sees. So this can store types of scripting, it can store variables, it can store animations and stuff as well. And the last thing that we're looking at is just game modes. So I think this confused a couple of people last week just based on the work I've seen this week and some of the practicals. A game mode is just a set of instructions, and it's just a set of rules to tell each level what player to use and different kind of events like what player, what HUD and stuff. So we only really probably need about 2 game modes for what we're working on for this ICA. So we'll obviously need a game mode is just for menus. So it's just for whenever we're clicking on buttons and we're moving from menu to menu. And then it's really worth us having a game mode for when we're demoing our in-game HUD. So whenever we want to take control of a player. So that's why last week I kind of used a thing called like menu game mode. Whereas probably in next week's videos we're going to end up making a different one. So it's just a set of rules. So if I jump into Unreal, I kind of explain this stuff in a little bit better detail. So last week we made 2 levels. We had a level called Splash, which was just designed to display, in theory, a game logo on screen. For mine, we just displayed some text. And then we had a level called Main Menu. And that's kind of what we're going to be working on today. We're going to be working on Main Menu a lot more. So if we look at Splash to begin with, if I double click on it and open it, you can see this level is totally empty. And the reason we know it's empty is we come up to the word outliner, there's nothing in here, so there's no lights, there's no static meshes, there's no actors of any kind. And that's because this level is really just used as a jumping off point for our game. So this will be the first map that I would set for the game to load whenever it starts out. And all it's doing is it's just going to create a widget on screen, and then the widget's going to do the rest of the work. So if I was to click on the blueprint and then open level blueprint, you can see here on event begin play, all I've done is I've made a thing called first menu. I've added it to the viewport, and then I set the mouse cursor to be available. So whenever we hit play, we can see how this plays out. So we'll hit play. Obviously a game called Maddie loads up, and then it transitions into the next level. So that transition isn't even happening inside our level blueprint. It's actually happening inside this widget that we made. So remember, if we pop in here into our level blueprint, you can see that I've made this thing called first menu if you ever want to find what you're looking at, so we can browse for it. And if I double click, this is what we're working with. So all I've got in here is just a piece of text, and then last week, if you remember, we did a little bit of animation, so we faded up the opacity of it and then we faded it down again. But if we go to the graph editor for this, we've done a little bit of scripting. So UI blueprints and widgets don't have an event begin play because they're not necessarily always present at the start of the game. They have an event construct. So whenever they get constructed, this is what gets called. So whenever we make them in the game, we go create widget, add the viewport. This is the first thing that gets called. So from here you can see the first thing we do is we play animation. At the end of that, I did a little thing called bind to animation finished, and that basically said whenever that animation is complete, I want you to run this event. And the event that it was running was just removing itself. So it was doing a remove from parent, but the target was itself. So it's basically going to grab UI first menu and it's going to remove it from the screen. And then the next thing it was doing was it was just opening a level, and the level it was opening was called main menu. So when we hit play, it kind of seems like fairly seamless, but what we're actually doing here is we're shifting from one level into the next level. And it's all being handled by the UI widget. We could have done it in the level blueprint, but I kind of wanted to show you guys last week how you can script stuff inside your widgets as well. So then if I pop into the main menu, so this obviously looks a little bit different. So for this here, we've actually got some stuff in here, and I just threw in some placeholder cubes and like a directional light just so we had some sort of 3D scene. But if we pop back in here again, into the level blueprint, you can see that we're running a very similar set of scripts. So we're saying whenever this level gets loaded, so as soon as main menu gets loaded up, we want you to add the second menu widget to the screen. So create it, add it to the viewport, and then show the mouse cursor. So if we were to browse for that and have a quick look at it, if I could click on it properly, there we go. You can see now menu, second menu is pretty crap. It doesn't have a lot of stuff in here. It's got no script in here. It's just got the text that says menu 2. So if I was to change this color, and we're going to maybe up the size as well. And we'll change the alignment. So whenever we hit play, now bear in mind I'm just in the main menu, so this is how it looks. Okay, there's no buttons in there we can click on, but it is displaying it on screen. So if we were to boot this game from the start, meaning we started from a splash screen, that level opens up, it opens up that widget, the widget plays the animation. When the animation's finished, it opens up the next level. The first thing that level does is it opens up menu 2. So that's kind of us up to date in terms of where we are. As a real quick recap, just I understand it's like super fast and I'm talking very quick and I've got a strong accent, so I apologize. But if anyone is struggling, I would recommend you go back to last week's videos, kind of go through them at your own pace and maybe try and follow along, because this is going to be the starting point for all the stuff we're going to cover today. So the next thing that we're going to try and do is we're going to try and run through some of the topics. So remember, I've done the recap. So from here now, I'm going to start adding some buttons that we can call different scripts on. From there, we're going to look at like some button states. And then we're going to take that 3D level we've got. We're going to add some cameras to it. And then we're going to script some camera movement based on the button presses that we're working on.